Hi everybody, Peter here once again, and this is Thailand-Bound. Thanks for joining me for today's video. Right, I've got 4 excellent stories for you today. They're very varied, so good stories. Before we get into these stories, I'd just like to tell you that from this week, or next week you could say, I'm going to be putting out the stories every 2 weeks now, not every single Saturday. I've been doing these for over a year, 18 months, something like that. You guys have been great sending in the stories, but they're coming in a lot slower now. And I don't want to run out of them. That's not the only reason. We've decided, Simon and I, as you know, Simon does the animations, Nat and Dave. We're going to be bringing them out on every alternative Saturday. So one Saturday you'll get the story, like today. Next Saturday you'll get the Dave and Nat video. The following Saturday the story again, and so on. That way you know what's coming and when to expect it. Because with the Nat and Dave videos, we're getting so many people asking us when's the next one coming out, because they're very, very popular and we have to answer each one. So that's how it's going from now on. Stories today. Next week will be the Nat and Day video, and then every 2 weeks alternatively. And on top of that, as you know, my live stream is every other Saturday. There won't be one tonight, there'll be one next Saturday, but every week, every Wednesday at 12 noon UK time, Simon and I do a live stream together. Okay, that all being said, let's get into this week's stories. 4 great stories, as I say, very varied, and I'll just jump straight into them.
สวัสดีค่ะ
Now, this particular story is a follow-on story. If you're a regular viewer to the channel, if you watch the stories every week, you might remember a story about a guy. He had a girlfriend called May. That was a story where she got a job in a restaurant apparently, and she phoned him up in Australia and said, look, I've been attacked, all my salary was stolen, can you send me some money? And the Australian guy was working abroad and he was going to Pattaya quite regular. So this is a continuation of that story. So if you remember that, all well and good, and if you don't, it's a great story anyway. Hi Peter, I'd like to tell you about another part of my scammer girlfriend, as my relationship with May was slowly drawing to an end. It's strange how the mind works. Sometimes, even though you know you're being taken for a ride, you still carry on to try to be some sort of rescue hero. Maybe I've just got a soft heart and I've had to learn the hard way. My girlfriend and I must have been together for around 3 months, I guess, and between jobs in Australia, I had a good 4 weeks to kill time in Pattaya. I could drink every day. I used to see older expats drinking every day and drinking hard, but I knew eventually I had to go back to work, and it is thankfully easy for me to stop, so no problem. A lot of the time I like to stay away from alcohol, as I could feel myself getting depressed and anxiety setting in quite often. I would usually ask my girlfriend May what she wanted to do today, as it was getting a bit annoying, spending every minute of the day together and having thoughts in the back of my mind about her true, genuine feelings about me. I chose to ignore these and just went with the flow, realizing it wasn't going to last forever. One morning she asked me if I wanted to go to the clinic to check everything in the downstairs department. She said we could both go, and her friend told her about a good clinic near Walking Street. None of us had any symptoms or anything, but on this occasion it was something to do, but boy did it cost me a fortune. The day came and we both headed slowly to the clinic. I let my girlfriend do the talking, as she had organised this whole scam through her friend, who was probably getting a cut of my cash too. After talking to the receptionist and her colleague, my girlfriend asked me what I wanted to check. I said just check everything, blood, urine, etc., as I presumed it would only be costing 300 baht, because I'd seen another clinic advertising this full checkup at the same rate. The doctor took me through to a small room and asked me if I had any symptoms, to which I replied, no, I just want a full checkup, thanks. He then proceeded to do a blood test, urine test and a swab, and then asked me to sit in the waiting room for the results. Very conveniently, the waiting room was just outside of where the doctor was looking under a microscope. I sat with my girlfriend, who was also waiting in the seating area, as she was finished first. After around 10 minutes, the doctor said all checks were done and handed a piece of paper to the receptionist with our results and the bill. What it actually said on that piece of paper was probably very different from the final price and results. Though looking back, it probably said what they were going to spend my cash on after they had scammed me. The receptionist said results for blood okay and swab okay, but you have a little blood in your urine. I was quite shocked, and was wondering if it was serious or not. The receptionist called for the doctor to come, and he conveniently brought a swab screen with about a dozen tiny spots of blood spread out over the glass microscope test thingy. I thought, well, that's not very good, is it? And spoke to my girlfriend about it. She said, you will need medicine, to which I replied, rolling my eyes, yeah, probably. The receptionist proceeded to type up the bill, and I couldn't believe it when she finished bashing as many numbers into the calculator as possible and then turned it around for me to see. It came to 8,800 baht. Please remember how much of a learning curve this was for me. Looking back, I'm so disgusted with myself, and I learnt a hard lesson on that day. I paid the lady over the counter, took my medicine, which was a rainbow of colours and around 20-30 tablets. Once she handed them over, she told me that I had to come back next week to do another test and see if things had improved. She didn't write on the bag what medicine I had, and there was no price on the bag either. I paid up, and being very annoyed at this point, I left the clinic and began to think, I'll just take these pills and see what happens. They were probably just a bunch of vitamins and harmless to me, but here was me thinking I genuinely had blood in my urine and needed help. A week passed and we headed back to the clinic. My girlfriend was probably secretly rubbing her hands together in anticipation of yet another huge payday. On entering the clinic, I was met with several big smiles. They must have been thinking, here comes that sucker again. I tried to remind them why I was in for a retest for urine after taking all these pills for the last week, but soon enough my girlfriend stepped in to remind them what I was here for. I walked through and did a urine sample, and the doctor asked me to sit again while he examined my sample hidden around the corner. I remember saying to my girlfriend, I hope this doesn't cost a fortune again. 5 minutes later, the doctor asked me to come into the back room and look through the lens of the microscope. Lo and behold, there was little specks of blood, and it was exactly 50% less spots on the glass than the last time. Looking back, this was obviously a setup, and everyone was in on it except me. I find it unbelievable the lengths that my girlfriend and the clinic staff went to simply scam me out of money, and I'm sure they went home to their families with a clear conscience. I can just imagine the kinds of comments that will be left by viewers after listening to this story, and I don't blame them, because yet again I paid the clinic another 8,000 baht and unbelievably was told that I would need to come back for yet another test. They must have thought the cash cow was ready to be milked dry on a weekly basis. I genuinely thought at this time that I must have some issues with my blood, as a respectable business would never scam someone, right? Fast forward and I returned to the clinic a week later, same procedure, and everything happened the same as it did on the first and second visits. The doctor once again asked me to come and have a look through the microscope. This time I just see 2 small specks of blood on the glass. The penny finally dropped and I thought to myself, this can't be right. I have no symptoms and I feel fine. Anyway, being very naive back then, I gave them the benefit of the doubt and paid them another 6,000 baht, as I appeared to be improving, and once again thought to myself, a clinic would not try to scam someone. They are professionals. Well, I got that right anyway, because as it happens, they were professionals, but professional scammers. I left the clinic and was cursing under my breath. I said to my girlfriend, this has all been a load of nonsense and I have been set up by you. I then said to my so-called girlfriend, I want to go to another clinic and see what they say, get the same test and just see what the results are. We went to Soy Buakhao and I went to a clinic to get the test again. I told them the whole story and showed them the medicine, to which the doctor replied, there isn't a name on the medicine and I can't tell you what they are. He then told me to return in 20 minutes, no prizes for guessing correctly, no signs of any blood, and I was A1. I walked out of that clinic, threw the fake medicine into the nearest trash can and left my girlfriend also standing next to that same trash can. I learned the hard way. I assumed that a professional business such as a legit clinic with people wearing white coats who looked like professionals would not dream of pulling off a scam like this. How wrong I was. I still visit Thailand and return to Pattaya and have fun, but I'm a much wiser man these days, and scams such as I explained in this story don't happen to me now. I suppose it's a case of buyer beware. I hope others will learn from my story. Yeah, I mean, that's something that people find hard to get their head around, isn't it? In your country, you go into a pharmacy, then you know they're really straight. But in a place like Pattaya, and I've got to stress, it's not all over Thailand. Most Thais are very, very honest. But in a town like Pattaya, then yeah, for sure, this can happen. And the thing is as well, it's not always obvious to spot the scams. Remember the story about the girl who used to go into the 7-Eleven. She told her boyfriend that she was working in 7-Eleven. She'd pay a member of the staff a couple of $100 and they'd go in the back room. She'd put the 7-Eleven shirt on the cap. Then she'd call her boyfriend. So very, very crafty. But as I say, most Thais are very, very honest. It only happens, mostly only happens in a town where there's lots of tourists, such as Pattaya. Okay, so I'm going to jump straight into the second story now. I stumbled across your channel around 6 months ago, and after all that has been happening over the last 18 months or so, I decided to go onto YouTube and watch some Thailand videos to bring back some happy memories of my travels to the kingdom, which was around 10 years ago. I often watch another YouTuber who has a channel and currently lives in Pattaya. I am saddened to see that it is currently a ghost town due to the current situation. Anyway, let me tell you about my story. It was in the middle of 2009. I was fairly fit, pretty okay looking, and was a lot younger than I am today. After a failed relationship in the UK, I decided to quit my job, rent out my house and travel around the world, backpacking for a year or so. My first stop was 6 months in Southeast Asia. I'd been to Thailand before on a 2-week holiday, visiting the islands in the south, and I instantly knew that I wanted to spend much more time in Thailand. When I landed at Bangkok, I made my way to the familiar Khao San Road. All the smells, sounds and sights took me back to my holiday 3 years prior. The first few months travelling were spent on the well-trodden backpacker circuit. The scene was great and I was having the time of my life, meeting girls from all over the world, Australia, Canada, Europe, etc., and had no problem getting closely acquainted with them most nights while playing on the beaches and spending lazy days in a hammock. After spending Christmas and New Year's Eve drinking to excess at the full moon beach parties, it was early January 2010 and a friend whom I'd worked with a couple of years ago had emailed me and said that he had seen me on Facebook in Thailand and that he will be in a place called Pattaya during January and February, and would I like to spend a few days with him in Pattaya. I had not seen him for ages and jumped at the chance to catch up. I had done a lot of research prior to my trip about the different countries and places I was planning to visit. Pattaya was not one of them, so I did not know what to expect. All I knew was that it was famous for girls and had an area called Walking Street, which seemed to be the main attraction. It didn't sound like my sort of place, but I thought, when in Rome. Plus my friend was keen for me to join him to show me around the city. It fitted in with my plans as I was en route to my next destination, which at that time was Cambodia. So after a night stop over in Bangkok, I took a shared minibus to Pattaya. It was a cramped minibus with no air conditioning and a very hot day. I got chatting to a local Thai guy in the minibus and told him my friend was staying at a hotel in Soi 7/8 and could I be dropped off there by the driver. After 90 minutes or so of driving, the minibus pulled over and the Thai guy said, just walk a little down there, but then some of the other foreigners said we are far from the centre of town. But I thanked them as I thought I was being dropped off by my hotel. I tried to ring my friend and he said that he was waiting for me. As it turned out, I was dropped off nowhere near my hotel and had to take a motorcycle taxi who knew exactly where I needed to go. He charged me 100 baht, probably twice the rate, but I probably would have paid double just to get there. After popping into a 7-Eleven to get some change for the driver, I walked along Soi 7. It was the middle of the day and very hot. I almost jumped out of my skin when I heard a deep voice calling out, "Hello mister, where you go?" A tall ladyboy tried pulling me into her bar. I politely declined and much to my relief, my friend and his group were walking towards me. The first thing he said to me was, "You look like you need a beer." I definitely need a beer. I told them about my journey and they laughed and said, "Get used to it. For the next week, this place will blow your mind." It was such a contrast from the white sands, palm trees and bamboo bungalows that I had experienced in the last couple of months. I felt slightly intimidated and nervous about what this city had to offer. The guys I met up with were all at least double my age and weight. They looked like the typical Monga and were all regulars to Pattaya for the last few years. This was fine by me as I don't judge others. One guy was married to a bar girl who was pregnant at the time. Another guy was a butterfly who would fly off when he wanted some entertainment. They took me to Soy New Plaza and to a small bar they had made their base for a couple of weeks. It was such an eye-opener what was going on around me and the stories that I was being told by my new friends about how it all works in Pattaya. Basically, forget the backpacker scene here. If you want to play, you need to pay. They laughed. Each night we started at a regular bar, then we all went off exploring lots of bars and go-go bars on LK Metro, Walking Street and Beach Road. I didn't know where to look half the time and the girls had my attention and vice versa, but up until this point it was all just longing stares. So 5 nights in and my friend asked if I wanted to meet a girl. I wasn't too sure as I told myself I shouldn't be wasting my funds on this kind of entertainment. As you know in Pattaya, if someone rings a bell in a bar, they have to buy everyone in that bar a round of drinks. Luckily, a random customer rang the bell 5 times in a row, so the drinks were flowing nicely, and I thought to myself, okay, why not? Let's do this. It's a once in a lifetime experience. I told my friend which girl I would like to meet, and he did all the organising with the bar. The girl walked straight up to me, and it was apparent she spoke no English whatsoever. We had a few smiles back and forth, but she seemed really nice. I decided that I was going to take this girl back to my hotel for more drinks alone in my room, and of course this was followed by some aerobics, which was quite a nice experience. I had been fairly drunk and by now I was exhausted and fell into a deep sleep. I was a little surprised because when I woke in the morning the girl was still with me and asleep. I woke her up, she had a shower and used my toothbrush, which I thought was very strange. I wanted her to leave as I needed to get some hangover food inside of me, so I gave her a nice sizable tip, thanked her for her time, and she went off on her merry way, as they say. Later I met up with my friends and they all laughed at my neck as I had some marks and they all knew how they got there, if you get my point. It was once again evening time and we found ourselves in the same bar. The same girl walked straight up to me. It made me feel quite awkward, as I have said it was a one-off experience which I did not plan to repeat. I tried not to make eye contact with her. She then walked off and I knew something was up. The bar manager lady came over and asked what's wrong. I said nothing was wrong, but I didn't want any company right now. I wasn't aware of the losing face thing at the time and it caused a bit of friction in the bar. So it may have looked as if I came across a bit rude to her, which was not my intention. I now know that if I was in the same situation today, I would not return to the same bar, which instantly takes this problem of a girl losing face out of the picture. Anyway, the next day I left Pattaya in a minibus and was heading to the island of Koh Samet, which again was more my type of scene. My friend and his new girlfriend and 2 other guys and his Thai wife found some nice cheap beachfront bungalows. I was back in my Thai paradise on a lovely warm beach without a care in the world. We had a great 3 nights there on the beach, enjoying great seafood and amazing sunsets. Then it was time for me to say my goodbyes and move on to Cambodia. The others went back to Pattaya. I thank them all for looking after me and showing me the ropes of Sin City. I look back now and see Pattaya as a great place and a very different scene to the one I had experienced compared to the rest of Thailand. Now that I am 10 years older, I totally see the attraction of Pattaya. It has exactly what I will be looking for in around 20 years when I will be looking to retire. But I also fully understand why it has its reputation from those who have not been there and the stigma attached to regular visitors who travel alone. I hope your viewers enjoy my experience of Pattaya and I look forward to hearing more of your stories. So great story there and thanks for sharing that. And I'm going to dive into the next 2 stories because these are quite short stories, so shouldn't take so long. This is a somewhat unusual story relating to my last visit to Thailand, which took place in December 82 and 83. I spent about 8 weeks travelling in Thailand, which was probably quite a different experience to the present day. On the day prior to my return back to the UK, I had some unspent money left over, and like many other travellers, my intention was to return later that year in December 83. With that in mind, I opened an account at the Bangkok Bank, Sukhumvit Road branch, and was allocated an account number and given a passbook. The deposit was for an amount of 20,000 baht. These were the days before debit cards, and of course, so this was 38 years plus. But time being a jet plane and moving too fast, I never went back to Thailand that year or ever again. At some time in the 1980s, I went to the London branch of the Bangkok Bank and was informed that as the account was in Bangkok, I would have to deal with that branch only. About 15 years ago, a friend in New Zealand visited the Sukhumvit Road branch to inquire on my behalf and was told that the account still existed. Unfortunately, due to a decluttering exercise I had a few years ago, I cannot find the passbook. I still have the account number somewhere. I must emphasize that no further transactions, deposits or withdrawals were ever made on the account. I admit to letting the situation slide. My fault entirely. Agreed, it's obviously not a large amount of money, but nevertheless it's my money, or that's the way I see it. Can you offer any suggestions or advice as to the possible retrieval of this money, or would you see it as written off? Well, you said 20,000 baht, so at today's rate that's around 500 UK pounds, $600, something like that. The trouble is you've lost the passbook as well, so I can't see any way for you to get the money other than walking into that branch with your passbook. Now, if you go into that branch on Sukhumvit Road without your bank passbook, you probably would get your money, but you'd have to jump through a lot of hoops. You'd have to produce a lot of documents. You'd probably have to wait for a new passbook to be printed, and then eventually you would probably get your cash. If it was me, you're talking 38 years ago, I would probably write it off and just forget about it, especially if you're not planning to go back to Thailand, because if you're not going back to Thailand, I just don't see any other way to get that money out of the Bangkok Bank. Okay, so on to the last story, and another little warning here, and it's quite short, but let's just read it out for you guys. So I have a story for you which is a bit different. My name is Shane. I'm a 34-year-old and from Australia. Two of my friends took a short trip to Thailand in 2011 and asked if I wanted to join them. I wasn't interested in travelling at the time, so I said no. Once they got back, they told me stories of Bangkok, Phuket and Koh Samui and how amazing and carefree it was compared to Australia. The following year, they booked another 2-week holiday to Thailand and asked me if I wanted to go. I just broke up with my girlfriend, so thought, why not? What do I have to lose? And it might cheer me up. We arrived in Phuket. There were 6 of us all together. We stayed at the Patong Beach Hotel for about 2 weeks. We arrived in the evening, and on the first night the guys went out, but I stayed in the hotel room as I had a slipped disc injury in my lower back, which had flared up really badly the day before we left Sydney. So from the 9-hour flight and an hour drive from Phuket Airport to Patong Beach, I was in so much pain I couldn't stand or walk without pain, so just stayed in the room and went to bed. The following morning, I went to the nearest pharmacy and got some painkillers. The best thing was that the painkillers they gave me were double the strength of the prescription ones you get back home, and even better still, I could simply buy them over the counter at a fraction of the cost. I thought the holiday had already started as a win. With the pain masked, we went out to discover Phuket, and I was amazed at the differences from back home. The first night I had out, we started at Bangla Road and we drank our way through the street. This was the case for the next 2 weeks, and I loved every night of it. I experienced the girl scene also, which I had heard about, but I didn't take any notice of it since I knew it was all fake and they just wanted my money. Anyway, the point of the story is what happened on the last night before I went home back to Sydney. Every night out, the 6 of us would go our separate ways and do what we felt like, but on the final night, we all had dinner together at what looked like a nice hotel restaurant. I thought it was the last night, so I'll have some of the lobster that I saw when I was walking in. I ordered the lobster and I ate it and didn't think anything of it. After dinner, we went to Bangla Road for one last night of partying. 30 minutes after dinner, I felt something funny and ran back to the hotel, where I spent the rest of the night and morning with the worst food poisoning I had ever experienced. And it continued the whole flight home back to Sydney, where I spent the majority of the 9 hours in the aircraft in the bathroom. Moral of the story, don't eat the lobster that's on display to pull you in. In saying that, I have travelled all over the world, and Thailand is still my favourite place, and I've been back 3 times since and can't wait to go back again. Regards, Shane. So yeah, I mean, a little lesson there, isn't it? What I tend to do if I want to eat seafood, I'll have a look at that restaurant, and if it's a very slow restaurant, as in not too many customers coming in and out, I'll kind of avoid it, because you want the restaurant with a high turnover, don't you? Because if there's a high turnover, obviously they're getting through a lot of product, and that product's going to tend to be fresher. The other thing I do is, if I went into a similar seafood restaurant and I wanted something that was looked nice, you know, they have it displayed on ice, don't they? They have a table of ice with some fish, lobsters, prawns, that sort of thing. But the problem is flies can land on them, and you don't know how long they've probably been there all evening because they're on ice. So what I'll tend to do, if I go into them places, I'll tend to point to something in a tank and I'll watch them retrieve it. It's not guaranteed. They could switch in the back, they can do what they want, but that's what I tend to do. So okay guys, that's it once again for this week, and just a quick reminder, no live stream from me tonight. I hope you enjoyed these 4 stories, quite a variety there, and as I'm always saying, if you've got a story, please send it in to me. I'm getting quite low now, and the next set of stories will be in 2 weeks time from today. So thanks for listening to these 4 once again, and the next time I'll see you will be on Wednesday with Simon for our live stream. Thanks guys.